It's WrestleMania weekend, and you know what that means. Ringside Heat is on the air on News Talk Saga 960 and on our YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Lex Tan, the host and producer of Ringside Heat, and this is a very special video that we're producing here for WrestleMania weekend, and we've got all of the ring crew all together. First off, to the right, at Taboada 93, Jose, at Coco Collects, Chico, at John Dawson Music, John, and of course, at Risen 72, Colin, who is going to be hosting tonight's festivities here. So, Colin, let's talk about the topic that you wanted to bring up for this very special episode.
This is great. I want to thank everybody for joining tonight. Listeners, my fellow ring crew, this is going to be good. This is very exciting. It's only going to be part one. If I had my way, this would be about 24 parts, but we're not going to do quite that. We're going to try and boil down a 30-year career, if that's even possible. So to start us off, I'm just going to hit you with some quick facts. Mark William Calaway was born in Houston, Texas, March 24th. Happy belated, Mark. 1965. He is the youngest of four brothers, or he has four older brothers. He majored in sport management on a basketball scholarship and almost went to Europe to play professionally before he thought, well, maybe I'll give pro wrestling a try. His first match, where he performed as Texas Red, was against none other than Bruiser Brody. That's his first match.
I did not know that.
That was his very first match. He did not win at all. And he still didn't quit the wrestling business even after that match. And that, of course, was at the Dallas Sportatorium on June 26, 1987. I was only 6. His other performer names before finally becoming The Undertaker, The Punisher, The Master of Pain, Dice Morgan. I think he should have stuck with that one.
Yeah, that one works.
Dice Morgan, yeah.
I think that would have been.
Then we got into some really creative ones. There was Mean Mark, Mean Mark Callis, and then Mark Callis. Another good one, Commando. That could have stuck. And before finally becoming The Undertaker, he was almost Kane The Undertaker when he debuted in 1990.
Yes,
I did know. Yes.
Yeah. So we talked about his very first match with Bruiser Brody, and of course his final match, and it was a great match to go out on, so I hope it truly is his final match, is the Boneyard match at WrestleMania 36, which of course he faced AJ Styles in a cinematic match. So that's just a very quick, lots of stuff in the middle, not in there, of course.
He did some stuff, yeah.
Yeah, he did quite a few things. Just a little. But what I wanted to know first off, to start us off, when did you guys first see The Undertaker? What year was it? Do you remember the match? What version of Taker was it?
Totally going to answer that with Survivor Series 1991. That was the first time that I was cognitive of this very scary dead man at this point. I was maybe about 8 years old, I believe, around that time. So for me, The Undertaker facing my childhood hero, Hulk Hogan, was a scary proposition. I was terrified of this Undertaker character.
I'm probably going to go with, I think 98, 99. But again, I wasn't like too big on wrestling at the time, but I just knew that there was a scary figure known as The Undertaker. I think a first proper introduction was actually 2001, 2002. I'm going to see the 2002 WrestleMania 18 against Ric Flair in Toronto. But even as I started to properly become a WWE fan in 2001, my friends, had WrestleMania 15 on VHS, so I got to see the truly dark ministry side of The Undertaker when he had that going with him. So it's hard to say, but I'm going to range it either between 99 and 2002, leaning more towards 2002 in a proper introduction.
I actually don't know. When Taker debuts in 91, and I said this before, that 90. I'd sort of checked out by that point. That whole new generation thing was a bit of, I just wasn't there. I wasn't watching as much. It was the only era I really missed since the rock and wrestling era. So
you're telling me you missed out on Damien Demento?
No, unfortunately, yeah.
First main event of Raw.
Listen,
against The
Chico,
Undertaker.
listen. I talk about this a lot in therapy that I missed that. It bothers me.
Oh my god.
That's a whole other episode, Chico. We got to
But
keep it moving.
yeah, like
There's a lot to cover.
I can't live there, Chico. I have to move on.
Yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
have to move on.
Fine.
I
won't-
tried,
I-
but
I
thank you
won't-
for bringing me back to that place of pain.
I
Thank
won't
you.
bring up Mantor, Man Mountain Rock, or
Please
Duke
don't.
the Dumpster Drozy.
No, that's,
Wow.
Oh,
no, that's
oh.
it's a
Yeah, take
place-
the glasses
a place
off.
of
Hold
deep
on,
hurt.
fellas. Hold on.
Place of deep hurt. That
All
I
right.
missed all of
Okay,
that.
we're back.
I'm not even gonna comment because that is way too young for me. So have fun, gentlemen.
No,
All you guys.
crying out loud.
All you guys.
Listen, Jose. Okay, so anyways, yes, we know Jose. I'm older than you. We all get it. I know.
We all
Everybody
get it.
Jose
We're
is
all
younger.
older than you.
We
You're
get
like
it.
an embryo still.
Let's all say it again, Jose. You're so young. Oh my gosh,
Oh
I wish
my
I could
God.
have those
Way
years
past
back.
his bedtime right now. We know. We got to keep it going. Yeah.
Hate to see it. Hate to see
no.
it.
So yet here I was, I'd be, on a weekend, watching TV as I often did. And I would see The Undertaker. I'm like, okay, but it's not Hulk Hogan, so whatever. I'll see what happens. But for the Taker that really captured me was definitely that early Attitude Era Taker. Once. And I would see bits about his brother Kane and all that, but it wasn't really until 98, 99 when I was kind of like, oh yeah. But I knew that the weird part is I knew who he was. I'm like, it's the Undertaker. Yeah, I know who the Undertaker is. He's the Undertaker. But I had no relationship with his character. I had no investment in it. But then as the Attitude Era dawned, he became very important. And I knew how much Colin loved him, and so I always paid a little bit of attention because Colin is my cousin and we spent a lot of time together as kids, so I knew how much he loved him. So he's always kind of there, but I would say the Attitude Era is when he really showed up for me.
And for me, the first time I came across The Undertaker, I guess it was in passing. And again, just like John was saying, that like I heard about this Undertaker guy and I heard he was really good and really scary as well. But my parents or my dad was able to get one of those illegal Viewer's Choice pay-per-view de-scrambler boxes as well. And that's how I was exposed to certain WWF pay-per-views without having to pay for them. And one of those was I believe it's headlined Yokozuna versus The Undertaker in a casket match, and Chuck Norris was the special guest enforcer at ringside. And all I remember
Survivor
was
Series 94, I believe.
Survivor Series 94.
I thought it was the Royal Rumble, but I could
No,
be wrong.
that's against that's without Chuck Norris.
Oh, gotcha.
They did the casket rematch in Survivor Series.
Actually,
I think
didn't know there was
later
a
that year.
rematch. Oh, okay. I had no idea there was a rematch. No
And
idea.
And I remember just the story that was being told in the ring was captivating. Like, and Yokozuna, first of all, for a man of his size, being able to move the way he did and be able to, I guess, tell his story physically in the ring the way he did versus this behemoth of a man who was so agile in the ring as well. Plus, there's this Paul Bearer type dude. When the Undertaker finally closed the lid of the casket on Yokozuna, and the music came on with what was it, Gunud's funeral march theme, whatever like that, and then Jim Johnson's little variations on it, and they're celebrating in the ring. Undertaker with his hand out like this, kneeling down. And then Paul Bearer opens up the urn, and then the laser light comes out of it. It was for the young Lex brain. That was fantastic, and it made me take notice of the Undertaker for the rest of my current life, and still is.
Excellent answers. For me, it was probably around 93, 94. I think it was right when Ted DiBiase wasn't going to be his manager anymore, and it was Undertaker versus Undertaker. And then, of course, this blew my little 12-year-old mind. And it was right around then. And then I think it was just after Yokozuna where he had that face mask for a long time after his orbital bone was crushed. But yeah, he caught, as Johnny told you, he caught my attention early. I grew up on Godzilla. I'm a monster movie fan. I watched horror films probably when I was way too young. So his whole character was just right up my alley. So I paid attention to him from day one. Okay, so that's when we first saw The Undertaker. Now, peppered throughout his career, unfortunately, maybe fortunately for some of these on the list, he had to face a cavalcade of monsters. Now, I'm going to ask which was your favorite, but I think I know what the answer is because there's probably two. The rest, maybe not. But here's just a quick list. I don't think I missed anybody. But these are the people that they just threw at The Undertaker because sometimes there was just nothing else you could do with them. A-Train. That was fun. Vader, which was good.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Henry, the Great Khali, who was
Oh boy,
destroyed in a Royal Rumble once.
Not so great.
Yeah. Big Show, which had potential, I think, at the beginning and then kind of fell apart. Brock Lesnar certainly counts as a monster.
Mm-hmm.
Yokozuna, of course. King Kong Bundy, who I think was the best at being scared of The Undertaker. I'll never forget.
Yeah.
Just him running. A man like him.
I got one more that could trump that, but anyways.
Yeah, I think I might have it here. Giant Gonzalez. Perhaps Mania's greatest mistake. Giant Gonzalez.
That's a name. That's a name.
And I think clearly the best one, of course, is Kane.
Yeah.
He's definitely a monster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think aside maybe from the obvious Kane, Yokozuna, Brock Lesnar, any other favorites or ones that stick to mind, good or bad?
Well, I want to add a couple of people to that list that I think were, or at least one person that was early on in that list that kind of captured my imagination was Undertaker versus Kamala.
I had a feeling we were going to say Kamala.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think that was one of, it might have been the first casket match for the Undertaker in the WWF. It might have been. Anyway, they had these vignettes where Taker and Paul Bearer were like in the woodshed, and Taker was like basically hammering away on pieces of wood, building this casket for this Ugandan giant. You know, of course, played by the late James Harris. Rest in peace. Sorry for the choice of words. Anyway, so Kamala and his manager Kim Chi were like, you know, trying to make themselves look tough, building up to this casket match.
I'm sorry. Say his manager's name again.
Kim Chi.
Okay.
Yeah. Now let's just not comment on how the 21st century snowflake folks would interpret that.
Just wanted to make sure I heard that right.
That's fine. First name Kim, second name Chi.
Yeah,
anyway,
gotcha.
One more time though, his name
One more
again.
time, his name was.
His name.
Say his name. Acknowledge him.
At some point,
I can't believe I forgot that.
Kamala, an African American fellow, played a Ugandan mystery man with a masked manager named Kim Chi.
No.
Okay, there you go.
Yep.
So they had these like amazing vignettes when on like Taker was like sweating, like trying to craft this like huge casket because they had to make a new one because Kamala was like a Ugandan giant, right? That's how he was built to be. So it added to the lore of this match. And I think it was the first major casket match, I think, in the WWF, where it was really like broadcast at multiple points on like an episode of Superstars, or they really were building to something here. So Undertaker versus Kamala, I think, was one of my really early favorite feuds with Taker. And it's just, I felt like adding him to that list. Sorry to take the long way around it, Kimchi.
Honestly, I'm sorry.
Just
I don't know
to
how
confirm on
never-
that, Chico, just looking up the stats, it was the first ever casket match in WWE history. The
Confirmed.
1992 Survivor Series. Yes, because if I'm
Boom.
not mistaken, there was vignettes of like Taker building the casket because
That's
of
right.
how big this was.
Yep.
You had to get the right size and all that.
Yeah.
Call.
But again, just looking at stats, it looks like it was the first ever televised casket match in WWE.
Yeah, that's
history.
probably why it still comes to mind, because it was so novel at the time.
Mhm.
Like it was fresh, man. It was cool.
I don't know. I mean, are you talking about monster opponents or just opponents in general, Colin?
The monster opponents, these specific group.
The opponent I have in mind may not physically be monster, but character-wise, I think it would be hard to argue, which is Mick Foley.
Yep. Mankind, yeah.
Mankind. And we all know the Foley Taker history there, but I think that was brilliant,
Yeah, a monster in a different way, not in
a monster in a
stature,
different
like,
way.
Yeah.
Like it
Like
was
a
a
deranged-
psychological monster.
Yes.
It was. I think that was a
great feud.
incredible feud.
I'd say it successfully transitioned Undertaker into the Attitude Era,
Oh, easily.
coming out of
And gave him one of the great, moments of the Attitude Era that we all know and talk about.
Yeah.
That, and it wasn't that original Mankind feud for sure. That was later. That was Foley, I guess. By that point, I'm trying to remember how Foley's character.
He was
had
still
evolved by that
Mankind,
point.
but he was coming out of it. It was like their feud had
He had
been
the
done
shirt on. He was
for
more
like 6
corporate
months
by that point, right?
Yeah, he was going more corporate. But that particular feud, the first one, was done like 6 months previous.
Yeah. So
And I think was just, let's have you two do this. And of course, history was made. Who knew?
The first Taker Mankind feud, I think it caught my attention because wasn't that the first time they had Paul Bearer turn on the Undertaker?
Yes.
I believe it
Yeah.
was.
So that really
That was the
it took
urn.
me by
Yeah.
surprise, man.
Yeah,
Well, that
and
was
that was all
Undertaker-
the
that was
boiler
his-
room matches. Yeah.
Yeah, that was his first face turn, if I remember correctly. Wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was,
yeah.
That was
Undertaker.
what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's also-
he was the face in the Taker versus Taker match, and when he faced the corporation.
Sure.
So
Okay,
there was many face runs before that, but I think that was his first real crack at being a truly solo superstar,
Right, there you go.
like
Okay,
with
that's a better way
with
to
no
put it.
management or anything.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think what makes the Taker Mankind rivalry a bit special was because again it was introducing matches that kind of similar to Kamala were novel and someone out of this world, like a boiler room match, which with the lure of the Undertaker backstage, Mankind looking for him can be a little freak, can definitely creep out a kid, and if that wasn't enough, it also introduced the first ever buried alive match as well
Yes.
at In Your House.
That is
So I
correct.
mean
Wow.
that feud really kind of like reached a good tipping point, and again it transitioned into the Attitude Era because they were starting to push limits, with stuff that we've never seen before. And again, the buried alive match I think is a perfect example of that.
Okay, now going from Cavalcade of Monsters, probably, arguably, the best tag team that didn't win as many tag team belts as probably should have, the Brothers of Destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny and I were fortunate to catch, I'm pretty sure it was a house show, right? I don't think it was Raw when we went.
No, it was a house show. Yeah.
It was a house show, but yeah, it was early stages. It was right in the middle of the SummerSlam feud with Austin, the Highway to Hell tour.
Yep.
And the two of them coming out, which was fantastic to see. But anyway, favorite moment for the Brothers of Destruction. I'm just going to start it off, not by naming my favorite moment, because there's about 8 million of them. But first off, could you imagine if the Brothers of Destruction and the Bludgeon Brothers existed at the same time?
Ooh,
Wow.
What
I
kind of
would love
feud
that.
that could have been? Yeah. Anyway, but yes. So, favorite Brothers of Destruction moment.
Okay, I'm going to jump in first here because I only have one, and I want to make sure I say it. And it would have to be during the 2-man power trip era.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The beatdown, Lita. Stephanie throws Lita in the ring, and they had booked it beautifully because we had not seen the Brothers of Destruction interact with Triple H and Stone Cold at all. Like for weeks, maybe months, they were just on completely different trajectories.
Yep.
And so you wouldn't even think, with the Hardys getting the beat down, Lita's about to get it, and then, they look unstoppable, lights go out, and you hear rolling, and the two of them walk out, and I watch it. I will regularly watch that. I've shown my kids that clip probably
Yep.
about 15 times. Easily my favorite Brothers of Destruction moment is the walk-in, not
Yep.
running, the walk-in.
Yeah.
They
Very
stood at the ramp.
casually. Yeah.
Taker
they were not
fixes
in a
the
rush.
glasses.
Yeah.
Kane does a little stretch. They give a glance to each other, and they walk down the ramp. It has to be one of my favorite things I've ever seen in WWE.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go next. I mean, given the era that the Brothers of Destruction were in, right? I mean, like, again, I was young at the time. My parents didn't want me watching wrestling and whatnot, so I don't have too fond of memories. But I think, like, looking, and when I end up watching clips from the past, the one moment that stands out to me is, I think it's the 2001 Royal Rumble when Scotty 2 Hotty is coming out, and you have Kane and Taker waiting for the poor kid.
Yeah.
And just the way that the camera like shot them, the way that JR sold them on commentaries, like the two guys side by side, almost the same height, just eyeing Scotty 2 Hotty down in the most menacing, like, pose ever. And then you have poor Scotty with a scared look on his face.
Oh,
And he
beautiful
just knew
work
that,
by Scotty. That look
and
on
you
his
just
face.
knew that, like,
Yeah.
exactly, like, as Scotty sold it. But I also have to give credit to the production, because, again, like, just like a simple camera, like, looking up diagonally, just looking at the two from the down up, like, they just looked so menacing. I think, to me, that's what captures the Brothers of Destruction, is that, like, these two will mess you up if you found them in an alley or somewhere, right? Like, if they're staring you down like that, run the other way. And Scotty 2 Hotty, poor soul, had to enter the match for the Rumble. And, like, again, like Colin said, his face told the whole story. He's like, I'm screwed. And the poor kid was beat up and then eventually thrown out of there. But I just love, like, the camera angle and just, like, looking down on the Brothers of Destruction.
Yeah, because he entered all hype and dancing, and then he realized who
And then he realized he's in the
ring. Yeah.
I'm gonna say mine was at Crown Jewel. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just joking. That was the worst possible answer.
Nicely done.
Yeah, let's just like Thanos snap that tag team match out of existence, because Sean didn't unretire. Of course he didn't. And this is going to be a much more minor moment than probably any of yours. But look, I like a good crossover, being a comic book fan. So, they had this graphic novel where Marvel faced DC in different stories collected in one graphic novel.
Yeah.
So you might not guess this one, because really it ended up being not much fanfare. But Stevie Richards wanted to get revenge on the Brothers of Destruction. Okay, and so this was around Invasion time in 2001. So who did Stevie Richards bring in to face Kane and The Undertaker in a feud for the WCW Tag Team Championships? To me, one of the most potent power combinations that was there at the end of WCW, and that was Chronic.
Yeah.
So the former Crush, Bryan Adams, and the former Atom Bomb, Brian Clark, they had their gimmick imported from the last remnants of WCW, and they came in and they looked as badass as they did on latter day WCW TV. So I thought this was going to be awesome, but it kind of just fizzled out at some point. But in the brief time that they encountered each other, those two teams, I thought Brothers of Destruction versus Chronic was a cool, like, crossover kind of feeling. So that was what stood out for me from that particular tag team. Because and there were many bigger moments, like the 2-man power trip one was an excellent choice, but at the same time, like, there were so many just sporadic things. So I guess I just picked what resonated with me for some weird reason. So yeah, Brothers of Destruction versus Chronic. That was a fun little brief feud while it lasted. Didn't last long, but yeah, there you go.
I would say, for me, it's not necessarily a moment. It's just the whole idea of these two powerhouses, these two who have had such a long and storied feud. Already at this point, when they got together as the Brothers of Destruction, have already had this feud for years. But it's also fueled by the backstory that WWE told us that they never filmed. I don't think that Paul Bearer was that Paul. I don't remember everything now, but, like, how Paul Bearer was supposed to be like Kane's father or something like that, like, and slept with the Undertaker's mother, and and Kane was the one responsible for burning down the funeral parlor that the
house, everything.
And they didn't even need to portray that story on film, on camera, anything like that. Just reading it just reading it, it already evoked so many things about who these guys were, the animosity that they had for each other. And for them to, I guess, overcome that animosity in that sort of say, in that whole, WWE way, and become, the most powerful and dominating and menacing tag team, at least physically and visually. I mean, they were really dominant during the time that they had for that push, and it was just satisfying to see how well they worked together, because after we learned the backstory about how the Undertaker brought Kane into the business, and he was, and Kane himself, Glenn Jacobs, has said that that the Undertaker is responsible for me having this career and having this life. It's getting into those little backstories and the background of it. It just seeing them together as the Brothers of Destruction, it made it so much better because of knowing the backstory of kayfabe and shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And just to add that, all that backstory was delivered solely by Mr. Moody himself, Paul Bearer, in promos, and often live promos. Just him yelling at the Undertaker about Kane is coming, Kane is on his way.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. It was all delivered just by him, brilliantly.
And Kane would actually do the same for the Undertaker later on when they were feuding after Kane buried Undertaker alive during, I think it was the Undertaker versus Mr. McMahon match at Survivor Series.
That's right.
And we've referenced it on the show many times, even last week, that Kane, Glenn Jacobs, helped build the Undertaker's return as the dead man all by himself.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. He still deserves an Oscar for that. Yeah.
That was the one he came back as Wyatt Earp, right? Came with with Colin and I've talked about that a lot.
Druids,
Are you
the
real?
Druids with the torches?
And I think, I think just to
So
quickly
good.
go back to the first point about like how we discovered Undertaker. I mean, again, I was introduced to the biker American Badass Taker. So looking back in clips, seeing clips from WrestleMania 13, WrestleMania 15, in 2001, 2002, and I'm like, boy, that's a really cool funeral march theme. I mean, the whole like presence of a dark Undertaker just kind of freaked me out at the time, right? So again, 2004, 10 years old, as I'm like panicking because holy crap, the Undertaker's returning to what scared me. And looking back at like old clips of Taker, like, oh my god, like how hell's gonna break loose again. 10 years old, being completely sold on terror, and Kane, like you gentlemen said, like just sold the hell out of it, and I think at the same time, just the promos that the production team put together, because they had to solely rely on not only on Glenn Jacobs to sell it on promos, but they had to sell it on the lighting, on the pyrotechnics, on the graphic packages, on the video
Titantron,
packages. Everything had to be done to perfection.
Hydraulics on the ring.
Just the hydraulics on the ring. Like everything had to be sold to perfection to sell the return of the dead man that everybody knew, right? And again, as a 10-year-old kid who never grew up and was introduced to that first Taker, I think it worked on scaring and terrifying little kids, because again, I was horrified that the Undertaker returned. That once he did, with Druids and Paul Bearer and everything, I told myself, oh my god, WWE is screwed, because they're all gonna die. They are all going to die. And so the point is, it worked.
The real Walking Dead. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Only one company can do that.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's true. Yeah.
Very
Sorry.
true.
Sorry, everyone, but that's the truth.
No, not even anything to apologize for. There's a reason why they're the only company that could do it.
Yeah.
I think I got goosebumps during that return at WrestleMania 20 that we're referencing here.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that totally captivated me, and
It was incredible.
yeah. And
And
at
the
that
look,
point,
the look was beautiful. Oh
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
again,
And
this
at
is
that
where
long
point,
coat
it was a
and the
combination.
the Wyatt Earp hat.
Yeah.
Like, it was the
It was a
gunslinger.
combination.
The gunslinger.
Yeah, and it was a combo look, I found.
It was
It
100%.
it was the tank top and the black pants of the American Badass, but with that.
That's
with the
my
hat
favorite
and the
Undertaker.
trench coat.
the
Yeah.
bandana as well.
Mhm.
100%. 100%
No.
my favorite Undertaker.
It was the hat.
See, I think as well. Well, no, I think he had a bandana underneath, or I think I said
He didn't.
But anyways,
he was
didn't.
like
No,
he was
maybe
in the
not that
middle of
night. Maybe
regrowing
not
his
that
hair.
night.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. No, you're right. You're right. No, but
No,
but
it was just the hat, man.
no, you're right. You're right. But aside from that, I think what also made the entrance work is how well they teased it in the weeks
Yeah,
leading up to
yeah.
WrestleMania 20. Like the gold urn in the casket. Hey, this could be something big, right? The fire emerging from the two pillars on the Titantron, the druids. There was, and then the callback to Survivor Series with the casket and the purple lights. I
Yep.
mean, again, like I just think that, like I said,
Perfect.
I just give so much credit to WWE's production team and creative that they dropped so many teases of what that entrance was going to be at WrestleMania 20. And again, I think the best part of it, like I said, was the gold urn found in the casket, which of course signaled the return of Paul Bearer. And as soon as he popped up, massive pop from the crowd, the demeanor in his face and everything. You could just tell that Paul was happy to be back.
Okay.
In that role once again, and again, just when you can see Paul Bearer or Moody just feeding off the energy of the crowd as Taker walked down the ramp back in his Dead Man gimmick.
Do you think, and this is something, and I don't mean to go off too much here, but we've had a lot of talk in the last few years about this, the entrance. Something about that year. Do you think the entrance went to another level after that? I mean, it was
Absolutely.
always something, but
Yeah.
it seems
Taker's
like,
entrance.
yeah, like it seems like after 20, it became far more epic. Like there were
without a doubt.
things, yeah. Like I feel like that was that just leveled up. It went entrance level 12.
And
at
I
that
don't
point,
know. Sorry, Lex, you want to go?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I want to start off with the fact that Jim Johnston's arrangement of the Graveyard Symphony just hit so well.
Based on a Chopin theme, no?
Yeah.
No, I think what he means though that it was the same Graveyard Symphony that he started with.
Yeah,
But
it's
then
exactly.
Jim Johnston added the bells and whistles, the thunderclap.
You could say he modernized it. You could say he modernized the funeral because obviously, if you go back to '96, and then you go back to 2004, you could say it was revamped, but in the best way possible.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And then like you could hear he toned down a little bit of the pipe organ so that you can so that you can have the orchestra, the trumpets, and then and my favorite part of that thing, very subtle, the kettle drum, the timpani that accents just the exact times that you want that melody to be accented. And to this day, like the old, I mean, like as scary as the old ones were from the 90s, that 2004 Graveyard Symphony was for me the epitome of Undertaker themes.
Best one.
But I think the source material is Chopin.
Cool.
I do.
See, I think also to
Chopin's funeral march. I double check that, but I think it is.
Oh no, you're right. You are totally right. I was actually listening to that the other day.
Yeah.
I see.
Different
I think
key.
to John's point as well about Taker's entrances. I think as well the technology had just was already like significantly advanced in what the production level was from Taker's last minutes, like Dead Man moment in '99. To 2004 and on. I think they noticed that, like, okay, we can sell the hell out of a Taker entrance, especially at WrestleMania, and then we can see how much more elements we can add to it as time goes on, and really enhance the Taker entrance again, especially on the big stage, because I think obviously most of us remember his biggest entrances or our favorite entrances. I'd say 9 out of 10 times we're going to be referring to a WrestleMania entrance.
Yeah, and John's right. I think that was the catalyst.
I think that was
because
I think that was it.
Yeah.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
When the Taker entrance thing, I feel like that was it. And you take Jim Johnston, you take Mark Calaway, and you take Chopin, and you take WWE, you've got a perfect storm for something absolutely phenomenally epic. And I think 20 was when it all just swirled into that beautiful little moment. And I feel like the Taker entrances after 20 have all been kind of calling back to that chill you got, because they never set one up as well as that, in my opinion. That was the one where it was like, is he coming back? Is he gonna do it? And you got Kane involved. And then he walks out looking the way he did, lean. He looked good physically, and then he had just the perfect look. It was absolutely spotless.
And
I
Kane
don't
selling it like a champ,
Kane
still in
sold it
disbelief until he touched him.
Yeah,
And
it
how
was-
Taker didn't flinch or move a muscle until that
I'm
first
sorry,
touch,
you don't
and then
get better than
exploded.
that. You don't
See,
get better than
I also
that.
think I also think there was no need. I mean, again, like the return of the dead man, right? Like I just like to the character shift. I think it was just it's hard to top it. I mean, of course, as ironically, the background of our video is his entrance from WrestleMania 29. It's hard to tell. So I mean, there have been some great creative moments, creative entrances with Taker over the years, but I just don't think anything can top that WrestleMania 20 because
No,
again,
I
it
agree
was
100%.
it was the return to the shift. It was shifting back to the character that we all knew how we started with it. At the same time as well, there was also that callback to WrestleMania 14.
And Kane's involved, and in terms of the story of the character, you need that guy, right?
I'm just saying, like I think the torches and the Druids were just such a big help because again, it goes back to their first encounter 6 years ago, which just conveniently enhanced the return of the Dead Man. It's like, okay, here comes the Prince of Darkness to take on his brother, and now it's holy crap, the Prince of Darkness is coming back to once again face his brother. But
he walked out like he was looking for a fight. He comes out like a gunslinger, like Clint
Right.
Eastwood walking into
course.
the middle of town. It was beautiful. Like,
I'm
it
just
was-
saying that I just think that the return to the gimmick just helped out. And then in terms of setup, because you talked about
100%.
the setup to that entrance, I don't think there was a reason for them to be that good because we were already in the Dead Man gimmick.
And you know what's funny with Taker, and I'm sorry to mean to go up, but when you have that, and I waited for that moment for years through and as much as I loved American Badass, I wanted that guy back so bad.
I was going to add that it ran its course.
It ran its
Yeah,
course, and then I
as a
found
kid-
myself I wanted him on a bike again. By the time he got to the Boneyard match, and I saw him coming, I'm like, there we go.
Yep.
That's how you end.
I mean,
That's how you
I,
ride off into the
there you
sunset
go.
or moonlight.
I mean, as a kid, like I said, I'm like, I want a Dead Man Taker. I want
Totally,
to experience
100%.
a Dead Man Taker. Everybody's already experienced a Dead Man Taker. Where's my Dead Man Taker moment? Oh, there it
You
is.
got him.
And it worked out. And again, exactly what you said. And I think there were so many teases over the years, like to get the bike back. Or like, is it going to be Dead Man? Is it time for Dead Man? Is Dead Man Taker going to take on Roman at WrestleMania 33 in Orlando? Is Dead Man Taker?
Big Evil.
Is Big Evil Badass Taker going to come back to take on John Cena in New Orleans?
I
the year
wanted it
after?
for years, 100%.
There were so many teasers. So of course, for me, again, given that was the first Taker
That was your
I
Taker.
saw,
Yeah.
and the last Taker technically that I saw.
Perfect
Yeah.
bookend.
To me, again, just
Best
given
story
the
ever
timeline
told in wrestling.
I saw Taker, the timeline that I saw Taker, that was my storybook. And
Yep.
I'm like, well, I've come full circle as a wrestling fan. I seen him first as a Dead Man Taker. He is saying goodbye. Sorry, excuse me, as Biker Taker.
I
He
know
is saying
you mean,
goodbye as Biker Taker. And to me, that was just perfect. Just again,
Right.
right.
And it's funny, but you can offset that because we saw him as under Dead Man proper.
Dead Man Taker, exactly.
Through American Badass back to Dead Man, and then we were. I think a lot of us would you like, at least if you're a Taker fan, like give me one more run, give me one more ride on that bike, one more.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think it was just such a fitting end because again, like I mean, Colin just said riding off into the sunset, but he's riding off into the night, like what Dead Man Taker would have done anyway.
It wasn't the
So,
sunset.
Yeah.
a
Moonlight,
lot of symbolism right there. Just again, he's riding off into
Well
a gimmick
produced, man.
that was loved, but he's also embracing the darkness that helped shape the career.
And it was
of the Undertaker.
AJ, and it was
Yeah.
AJ. Come
Now, before we
on.
get too much into AJ, because I think we're going to leave that
right.
for part 2, more into that match. But I think it's so easy just to, because there's so much to pick from
Oh,
a
yeah.
30-year career. It's ridiculous. But
yes.
I think a good one to finish on, because we started it with talking about Kane, is favorite rival. So long-term rival. So now
gosh.
just a quick list.
Oh wow.
We've covered Kane pretty much right now, but I mean,
So he's out, non-Kane rival.
well, just see who else is on the list here first.
Okay.
He can definitely be your favorite, but early on, Brett, maybe not as long as the others, but him and Brett had a good few matches. Austin, Highway to Hell Tour especially. Mick Foley, we've touched upon. Edge, possibly the first real time we thought the streak might actually be in jeopardy. The story being Edge had a counter for every move that Undertaker had. The Legend Killer, Randy Orton, that was a great run. That was a run I actually really enjoyed, Randy Orton. As we know, I'm a 50-50 on him. Brock, of course, is a great rival of Undertaker. And I always kind of put these two together with especially how it ended, but Triple H and HBK.
Yeah.
For me, it's almost like a 3-way tie, even 4-way, but Mick, and again, I put Triple H and HBK together, especially as it, ends up being in the end of era match. But Edge in there too, Canadian pride, of course, but it was the first time I felt he might actually, get the streak here, because he's just getting away with every trick in the book on Undertaker leading up to that match.
Yeah. Okay. So when the Austin feud was huge, because it was one, if I recall, it was one of Austin's first real big programs coming out of 14.
Yeah, defending, like his biggest defense. Yeah.
I mean, I think Do Love was his first defense, but I mean, like, Taker was a formidable. Taker and Kane both seem to be the guys where you're like, and and as a guy who loves Stone Cold, I'm like, oh man, these guys seem like they can.
It's Kane and Taker, yeah.
Yes, Kane and Taker. So I loved him there, and I loved that. I thought they were perfect for that. But for me, when HBK trying to get Taker, wanting him to be his opponent, finally Taker showing up one night, and I can't remember which, it was probably Raw, and he just comes in, grabs the mic, and looks at Shawn Michaels and says, "You have my attention."
That's because Shawn cost him the belt.
Shawn cost him the belt.
Yeah,
I loved that so much, and it was just it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And
because Shawn was desperate to get that rematch.
I loved that. You have my attention.
Oh yeah,
it was so good. So I'm for me, it's Austin and HBK.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump off of that and say that it's only HBK for me. I'll pick one guy who's my favorite versus Taker, just because WrestleMania 25, the first Mania match between those two, ended up being my favorite WrestleMania match of all time.
Or could be the best WrestleMania match of all time.
Yeah, I could say objectively,
it's said by many, right? So
yeah, right.
And because the build
comes close, but
the build. As a whole feud, as a complete storyline, I'd never seen something pulled off that well in WWE. There were I'm sure there were many things, because they are the standard bearer of the industry. So
yes, they are,
and they always will be, no matter who else fancies themselves elite or anything like that.
I hear there are other companies out there.
No matter how many factions they have.
And no matter how many try to make an impact, and no matter how many,
how much honor that you want to bestow.
Okay, all the major leagues, right? So
all honor elite, yep, for sure.
Yes.
Anyway, sorry, go.
Thank you for,
wrestling entertainment from Hamilton, maybe.
Yeah. All right, Chico, keep going.
Yeah. I mean, never mind. Anyway, it was perfect, and I'm the kind of guy who likes to live his life with a bit of faith, like peppered into a lot of things. So spirituality, that Christian kind of dimension. So, man, I loved it when they brought in the supernatural stuff, like heaven versus hell. Like, I really dug what they did, and I was waiting for them to kind of make it just feel wrong, because WWF had done that quite a number of times in the Attitude Era, where they kind of there's the line, and here's me stepping all over it because ratings. And all well and good, all's fair in love and war, Monday Night War. But I think that this came at a time in 2009 where, man, WWE just refined everything that they knew. It's like they took all the skills that they had accrued over their decades of existence, and it just came out in this feud. Week to week, it was one brilliant move after the other. It was I think Shawn Michaels gave a eulogy to a casket that was supposed to contain the Undertaker or something like that along the way. Mm-hmm. And all partially playing into the real life fact that Shawn Michaels found Jesus at some point before his comeback. Yeah. It just all played so brilliantly. And then the entrances were so good. descending from the heavens with Shawn Michaels and ascending from the depths of
Yes.
darkness was
That
the
was
Undertaker.
beautiful. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Just like that encapsulated such a great build. And
Well, the tagline from Undertaker, it's going to be hell getting to heaven.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Yeah.
that whole thing, I consider that my favorite feud just because it was so masterfully executed from top to bottom. And I don't know, it was a few months maybe worth of build. Like when did they?
It wasn't
kick this
too
off?
long. It was probably
No, it wasn't long at all. No.
Like
A
Rumble
month
onwards?
at least, but maybe not even longer than
It
that.
felt like it kind of came out of nowhere at one point. I was like,
I think it was just after the Rumble, if not around No Way Out, if No Way Out was still a thing.
So anyway, Rumble to Mania in the 21st century is an eternity, like of worth of build, and so that long-term storyline was longish term storyline was told just perfectly.
Yeah,
and
it was brilliant.
It's my favorite feud of Taker's just because of how brilliantly that particular feud was executed, and it was so good. Like that match ended up being so good, and the build was so good that it convinced Bret Hart to open his heart to appearing on WWE TV again, and he had not been open to that before that. So this is just so good, beautiful storytelling.
Just to confirm on that, it was just after No Way Out when Michaels challenged John Bradshaw Layfield, with the winner advancing to challenge The Undertaker to earn the right to face The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. And then Kozlov, if you remember that name, kind of got into the mix there before it was officially Shawn Michaels. But yes, it was essentially the win and you're in to take on The Undertaker, because at that point the streak was really like at the was really like an honor to try to challenge at that rate, right?
Right.
Yes.
Well, however long or short it was just so perfectly done.
It was like about, from what it looks like, just about February 16th is when it roughly started. So it was just over a month.
Sure, but every single week that they had that going, there's at least 4 or 5 different things that happened that were just.
It was intense, and there wasn't a lot of. I mean, at that point, it was really just Raw and SmackDown, and they ramped that up quick. It was brilliant.
Favorite feud. Oh my god! I mean, again, like Colin, you listed off so many, and oh my goodness, Lex, maybe you have to get back to me, Lex. Well, I mean, I'm trying to think. There's a lot of great stuff. That's why
there is.
It's so hard to pick one.
Well, let me just before Lex does his one. I think I just wanted to throw in like the first thing about the Undertaker in terms of feuds that caught me, besides like the Hogan thing that I mentioned, was Yokozuna. I think when Yoko brought in 10 guys at Royal Rumble 94 and to get Undertaker into a casket, it was like I don't know what it was. It was just different, and it captivated me. And then that feud like went all the way up to Survivor Series that year, and there was the rematch. And for some reason, Chuck Norris was the outside enforcer, and it was just good. It was a good tit for tat kind of feud.
Chuck Norris wants to enforce something. You let Chuck Norris enforce whatever he wants to enforce.
Well, I did have a feeling as a kid. I'm like, okay, if Undertaker was going to have a hard time like facing Yokozuna fairly, that once they brought in Chuck Norris, I was like, Taker's going to get his revenge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, personally for me, again, like Chico, my favorite feud of The Undertaker's was with HBK. But as I look back on his career, I also find that I didn't appreciate it as much, but I appreciate it now, the feud that he had with Edge. And as you also mentioned that, Edge had an answer for everything that The Undertaker was throwing at him.
Yep.
And actually, the first episode of Ringside Heat, talking with Jimmy Corderas and knowing how honored he was to be the guy that was going to referee their match for the World Heavyweight Championship. And, Edge and Jimmy Corderas, two of our Canadian brethren, versus arguably one of the greatest, or not arguably one of the greatest of all time, and just how special that was. I guess that when I look at it after years of being away from it and seeing it from, I guess, more of a third party standpoint. That was a big thing. That was a big thing for Edge, Jimmy, and for and for Canadian wrestling fans. Taker was in a match with one of our guys and was treating Edge with all of the respect that he would give the best of his opponents.
Yeah.
There was honor in that.
It was a serious match. It wasn't treated lightly. It wasn't comedy. It wasn't, A-Train and Nathan Jones. It was a serious. This is a real match. And I think too, Edge was also boasting he also at that time had never lost at WrestleMania.
He never
too.
lost
So
at WrestleMania.
he was calling it a streak versus streak and everything.
Yep, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sure. Let's just skip over the fact that he had to be carried out on a stretcher the year before during the Money in the Bank ladder match. But yes, 6-0 at WrestleMania up until that point. And I think as well, what kind of like helped that out was the fact that it closed WrestleMania 24. I mean, you could have very well been another Cena Triple H main event. Obviously Orton into the mix there, but no, it closed that Mania. And I think that, again, like to Lex's point, just made it more special because, again, Edge never main evented a WrestleMania up until that point, overdue if you ask me. And before his return a few years ago, like in 2020, his only WrestleMania main event, right? So and even Taker at that point didn't get too many main events either, in hindsight, looking back in his WrestleMania career. So it was bigger, I think a bit bigger in more ways than one.
Yeah, and I mean, it was not just the very prestigious like Undertaker streak match of the night. It was also a world title match. So it had everything that was supposed to be, and it was like just an ultra main event. And our boy Edge was part of it, man.
I think, again, like you listed off so many feuds. And I think the one that kind of similar to what Lexa said, and didn't really appreciate at the time, but acknowledge it, and I think kind of somewhat underrated, knowing how big HBK was, and then how big Triple H ended up being at WrestleMania 28 and 27. I'm gonna say Orton. I'm gonna say Randy Orton. It's not necessarily like a favorite feud, but it's one that I think needs to be acknowledged because, again, I think Orton Taker is an extremely underrated WrestleMania opponent for Taker, an extremely underrated match. I mean, I think it was the first time that people realized that the streak was part of a storyline, because I think in years before it was just focused on the characters and the story, and the storyline between like the Taker's opponents. Like, for example, like, was first brought up. The streak was first brought up at WrestleMania 11 against King Kong Bundy, but who cared that Taker was 3-0 at that point, about to be 4-0, right? Nobody cared. But Orton was the first that realized, that kind of said, okay, well, Taker has this little thing going, 12-0 at WrestleMania. I want to take. I got this. I've been kicking it. I've been beating every legend's ass, and so that was the first, like I said, the first Mania of, okay, he has a streak going.
That's a great point.
And again, like the scare of the chokeslam into the RKO was, again, dropping at the time, because, again, you realized, holy crap, the streak is about to end. It's being first brought up, and it's about to end now. Brilliant execution by them. Obviously, Taker came out, but as great as that match was at WrestleMania 21, it carried on, and it never felt like, again, maybe I'm too young, but it never felt like it dragged on. Like they were able to like continue the storyline periodically throughout the year. Can't forget Undertaker coming out of a burning casket at Survivor Series, and then the epic Hell in a Cell. The last time the first like cell size was used at Armageddon that same year in 2005, and Taker, the beautiful horrific image of the Undertaker, again, not like horrific as in horrible, as in like, it's a good look of terror, Taker like at the top of the cell, arms up, arms out in the air, eyes back, fire in the background, the purple light. Horrifying photo. If you're not a fan of horror, like me, I'm not a fan of horror, so to me, creep the crap out of me. You're like, holy crap, that man's out to get me. And again, it was a great cell match. Like, they held nothing back. I think there was a story of like, Orton taking a brutal shot to the head with the steps or the chair because he accidentally hurt Taker legitimately earlier on, and Taker
months before.
Yeah, here you go. Like here, and Taker's
the
like, here's your
receipt.
receipt. Boom, right? And like, ouch. So I think, but the mind games was great. Orton's father helped enhance that as well. Being part of the storyline again, just being scared with his son. The casket that everybody thought was a wax figure, and then boom, it's actually Taker. Or when Orton's running around an arena on SmackDown, and at every entrance, Taker could pop up. But I was scared to death with that. At like every exit, either like pyro popped up or like is Taker gonna like jump scare us? I just think that throughout the year was just great. But again, I don't think we would have gotten that had we not had an incredibly underrated match in Hollywood at WrestleMania 21.
Yeah. Agreed.
You talking to me?
Orton, no?
Well, I mean, I'm just really glad that nobody said Maven. So I think I was worried. I never know what Jose's going to say. So, I thought,
It'll never be Maven. It'll never be Maven. He'll say a lot of things.
I mean, it's a nice little moment for Maven, but not that it should have surmounted anything beyond that. It was good for him. You did it. You did it at the Royal Rumble.
Congratulations. I guess.
His career.
You did what you're supposed to do in the match. Eliminate everybody at all costs. So he did his job.
Hey, Maven can take it back to the classroom that he eventually went back to become a teacher in. And he can bring his footage versus the Undertaker to show and tell. So
that's true.
And you can't teach that.
There it is. I think that's all the damage I can do tonight, Lex.
Wow, to end off on that. Well, first of all, if you are listening to this on the radio, you'll notice that we've separated into different parts so that it will fit in the radio format. But if you're watching this on the YouTube channel or just listening back to it, we want to thank you for spending this hour with us and taking a little bit of a deep dive, one of our deep dives into the career of The Undertaker and the impact that he made on each of us as a wrestling fan.
Right, the impact.
And the honor that we feel that when we go and see Undertaker.
He's in an elite category.
All by himself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you could say that I was extremely happy to see him to see him in a feud with Brock Lesnar, and when Paul Heyman was in the ring with him, and he was Biker Taker during that was that SmackDown 2003
Sure.
2004 you said?
No, sure.
Oh, sure. Okay. But yeah, again, thank you again for taking this deep dive with The Undertaker with us. Just want to thank Colin for bringing up the idea and hosting tonight's festivities. And you can follow him at Risen72. Also thank the rest of the members of the ring crew here at John Dawson Music, John Dawson, at Coco Collects, Chico Nuguid, and at Taboada 93, Jose. My name is Lex Tan at Lex Tan Media. You can follow the show at Ringside_Heat and look out for more great content here on the Ringside Heat YouTube channel. Until next time, we'll be here. We got you. Ringside Heat. We are the new law in this town.
Oh, yeah!